Hey everyone, my name is Shannon Kennedy, and I am the head coach of the Add1 Challenge. Today I have one of our challengers with us, Chas, who's going to tell us a little bit about his experience in the Add1 Challenge. So, Chas, why don't you tell us what language you studied as a part of the challenge?
I chose to study Spanish
And why did you choose Spanish?
because there's people in my community I can talk to. A long time ago, when I was in my early 20s, I had studied German and French, and I enjoyed both those languages a lot, but there wasn't a lot of opportunities here in the United States to actually use them. So I've kind of come back to language learning after a long period of not studying languages, and Spanish seemed a good choice because I know I can use it here. It won't go to waste. I've got Spanish speaking friends. And so, opportunities to practice and use it.
And what attracted you to Add1?
Well, I joined the Fluent in 3 Months website and then began getting the emails about the Add1 Challenge and reading about them. And it seemed very attractive, but it also seemed kind of scary to me because I was like, oh yeah, you're going to be like talking on italki to people you don't know in another language. And I just thought, oh, that's way too scary. But, reading about other people's experiences again and again and made me slowly change my mind about, or at least try to be more open-minded about that. And I thought if all these other people can do it, maybe I can too. Maybe it's not so scary. But so many people seem to benefit from it so much that for a long time I decided I really would like to try it.
When you started the challenge, did you have any particular plans about how you're going to go about it, what resources you wanted to use?
I'd been studying on my own here and there using software, and I used a Fluenz program for a while, and then there's a local community college class I was taking in Spanish, and that was just once a week though. And I felt I wasn't really progressing that much. So the idea of the Add1 Challenge was to kind of shake it up and find out more resources and find out what other people do. That I live in a small town in a rural area in Oregon, and there's not a lot of obvious interest in other languages here. So I kind of felt isolated when it came to language learning. My Spanish class, it's like only 5 or 6 people, and it's usually the same people each semester. So it's just a small group of us there, and there are opportunities here if you look for them. But I just felt I needed some help, and well, that was the whole thing that seemed attractive about the Add1 Challenge, is just finding out how people do it. Especially when you're in a small community. In a big city, you might find more resources, but when you're on your own, you kind of need more help, and I could think that's where the internet can be real handy.
And so you would say that the Add1 Challenge helped you feel less isolated?
Oh, totally, absolutely.
Within the challenge itself, what resources did you use? What did you find very helpful?
For starters, I was just absolutely amazed at the amount of resources there are and the things that people were using. And I kept making bookmarks. I've still got a whole list of bookmarks in my browser of all these wonderful websites. I haven't even explored them all yet. There was just too many to do during the challenge. But I'd started using Duolingo, which I'd known about before, but the last time I looked at it, I wasn't all that impressed. And then this time it said sign up for several different things and try them. So I signed up for some things, and Duolingo seemed really appealing. It had evolved a lot since I last looked at it, and it was forcing me to deal with certain sentence structures that I just didn't get in Spanish, but now I had to actually say them and listen to them, and the repetition of being exposed to them. And they have these forums where you can ask questions and things get explained. So I found that very helpful. And I actually made a whole list of resources. LingQ looked very interesting to me during the challenge, but I wasn't able to figure it out. And I even signed up for it and didn't really use it during the challenge because every time I tried, it seemed a little too complicated. But since the end of the challenge, I've really gotten into it. I really, really like LingQ. It's has so many, it lets you study in ways that you find pleasing. So that's one of my favorite resources now. But I actually made a whole list of things that one of the assignments in the challenge was to sign up for a local meetup, and I found out there was one at the library once a month here. So I've connected with that group, and it's really cool to have local people you can actually go and talk to in Spanish, where your whole purpose is to go there and do that. And I shared a lot of these links with them. They were like, oh, those are so fabulous, great.
As far as what you thought you were going to do when you started the challenge and what you actually did, first, what was your daily study commitment? How many days per week and how much time per day? And then how did you fill that time on a day by day basis when you were actually in the challenge?
One thing that kept me from signing up was that I own a business and sometimes it gets very busy. And I was afraid that if I'd sign up for the challenge, things would get so busy and I wouldn't be able to do both. And I'd have to not do the challenge or let it go or something. So I made the minimum commitment. I think it was 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week. And at when I began the challenge, I thought, well, maybe I should just bump it up. And I just thought, no, if I stick with the minimum, I know that at least I can probably accomplish that, but I can always do extra and always do more. And there were days I did a lot more sometimes, but then there were other days it was a crunch. And I'm so glad that I didn't push it too far. Because, it's the difference between saying, yes, I did it, and no, I didn't.
So you mentioned that you run your own business. I'm curious to know how you fit language study into your schedule. Was there a particular time of day that you studied? Did you divide it up throughout the day? What worked for you?
Well, the funny thing was, I somehow imagined that when I started this thing, it was going to show me how to create a routine and then everything would be on automatic pilot and I would just be learning a language. But instead, it was more like every single day is different and you have to juggle things. Now, you had some advice in the beginning of the challenge, which I thought was very good. And that was like, get your commitment out of the way as early as possible in the day. And especially before you start reading on the Slack forums and stuff, because you can get lost in that stuff. And so I would try to make sure I did my minimum and then fit anything else I could during the day as the day went on and just evolved and see what can fit where. But it was sort of like learning how to juggle and how to balance. And in the beginning, I thought, well, I have to get this juggling balancing thing out of the way so I can start learning. And then like halfway through the challenge, it was like, oh, this is the learning part. It's what we all have to do every day. It's life. It changes. It's not static. It's constantly moving and you got to move with it. And that's how you fit language learning in.
Let's switch to discussing your videos. In the Add1 challenge, you have to create a day 0, 30, 60, and 90 video. So what was your particular approach in creating the videos?
But that was a little intimidating at first because I wasn't really used to making videos and there was a kind of a learning curve how to make them and how to upload them online, but it wasn't impossible. I had a smartphone and I wasn't that conversant with it, but I learned to be. And it was simpler than I thought, actually. There was that little learning curve, but I managed that. There was help online too on Slack giving you, tips and stuff. And at first, it was kind of intimidating because I felt kind of self-conscious, but I think everybody does when you first start doing it. But then you get used to seeing yourself and hearing yourself. And after a while, it's no big deal. And actually it was kind of easy. In the beginning, I had a problem where I felt I wanted to, nothing was quite good enough. It had to be perfect. And that slows you down so much and just gets in the way. So it was really pretty early on. I just decided, oh, what the hell with that? It's good enough. I've only got this much time. I've did this. Yes, I made a lot of mistakes, but that's great. I can tell I made mistakes. So I'm learning from that. So video is good enough. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's just supposed to be fulfilling the assignment. So, yeah, my first videos were long and awkward, but that's because I wasn't used to speaking either. But, and then of course you do the 30-day video and you can really see the progression where it was getting easier and I was able to say more. But the funny thing was the mistakes never went away. I somehow imagined that by the end of the challenge, I'd be speaking perfectly. And that didn't happen. Two things that shocked me was that A, that didn't happen. B, I was completely fine with that. Because one of the biggest realizations I think I had in the challenge was the importance of making mistakes and actually embracing that and letting it teach you. Because if you don't make the mistakes, you don't know what you're doing wrong. And to be able to see those videos and be critical, not because you want to be perfect, but because it's like, oh, look at all those mistakes I made. I know what I need to work on now.
So with the videos, was there something that you did in particular to prepare? Did you perhaps script or pick a topic that you're going to discuss in the videos, or did you just go for it and improvise?
Oh, there was a combination of both. In the beginning, I tried scripting, but the problem with that was if I wrote a script, I would write in English what I thought I wanted to say, but I'm much more adept at English than I am in Spanish. So, you'd write this nice little script and then you'd try to say it in Spanish and it was just way too hard and you couldn't remember it all. And it was just, beyond me. So I realized when speaking in Spanish, I had to simplify, just talk at my own level, which is almost like a child. But that worked a lot better that way. And I just got rid of complicated ideas or complicated stories, and actually helped. This is one thing that really helped being in the challenge, being able to watch other people's videos, because some people were really inspiring because they did things so beautifully and so well. I don't know if you remember, um, there was Laura who did that video of, she was talking about her flute collection, her musical instruments, and she was talking about them in Spanish. And it was, just describing the way they looked and how they sound and why she liked certain flutes and this, that, and the other. And it was so easy to follow and understand. And it was so obvious that she was enjoying talking about her collection and showing it to us online. And I just thought, all right, so she's picked something simple that she likes to talk about, and the descriptions and stuff weren't complicated, and it worked really well. And then there was Mark, who did that video of him making an omelet, and he was talking about it in French, and it's like that's something he does every day, or cooks a lot. So just to take something in your life that you're already doing and then just talk about it as you're doing it made a lot of sense to me. So I did the same thing, and I live on a small farm. So I decided to go out in the chicken coop and talk about my chickens because I'm always out there with them. And I thought, well, what can I say about them? And it's like, well, yeah, all right, this one's the mother, and this one's her daughter, and this one's grandmother got eaten by a falcon, and or whatever it is, But I could talk about family relationships and use the chickens as a way of an excuse to talk about that. It's just taking something that's already there in your life, something you're already familiar with, and then having a simple conversation about it. That worked way better than any planning or scripts or anything. And then as I was speaking, I maybe, I think, oh, well, I made a few too many mistakes. Maybe I should try it again. Or when I'm doing it, I would think of other things I could have said. So I'd do it again and add those. And I thought, well, don't keep recording because you're not trying to be a perfectionist. But once I gave up trying to be a perfectionist, then I didn't mind doing multiple shoots because every time I did it, was more practice, more speaking, and I'd learned to say more things. So I would do it as long as I could and then just delete all the extra copies. But it was all practice speaking and practice getting familiar with the camera. And so collectively, it all just helped a lot.
You went on to do extra videos in addition to the required 4 as well. What was your process in making that decision and preparing those videos?
Well, it was suggested that we do extra videos, and I didn't have a lot of time I did, there was assignments to go on eTalkie, and I did some of that, but I wasn't able to schedule a lot of appointments on eTalkie. But videos were easy to fit in when I had to say, oh, I've got 40 minutes right now. I could just take the camera and look, there's deer out in the yard. I can go talk about them, or something like that. And it was just, you could fit those sort of things in here and there. And I saw other people in the challenge doing that. But yeah, you could just make these things as part of your life. I found the videos easy in that way. And the extra videos I started doing toward the end, there was the Benny's language hacking books that had lessons, and I was doing some of those as extra video credit and then posting them online as well. So those helped because the language hacking books, they're very basic, and it helps you use a lot of basic words you really need to learn in the beginning. So I found it very helpful to do that.
As far as during the challenge, were there any particular challenges or obstacles that you faced? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, well, my biggest fear about doing the challenge in the first place was I just thought, oh, something will happen in my business and it'll start taking all my time and I'll have to drop out. And toward the third month, there were some things going on in my business that started cutting deeply into my time, and I wasn't even sure I could complete it. And the way I coped with it was, before I even did the challenge, part of me was afraid this thing was going to happen, and it did, as it turned out. But I just told myself, look, approach this with a light touch. I'm doing this for fun. I'm doing it because I want to enjoy it. So I'm not going to get heavy about it. And I just thought, I'll sign up for the challenge. And if for any reason I can't complete it, well, I'll just go back and try it again later. But just doing it once, I thought was going to at least expose me to the process and show me what it's about. And by letting it become familiar, I'd learned so much about it that if I had to go back and do it again because I couldn't finish the first time, I could do that. So I just approached it with a light touch. So when the problem actually kicked in, and I would have made a lot more videos toward the end, but I didn't have the time, and I wasn't even sure I could get in that last 90-day video. But I just kept telling myself, just try it. You got nothing to lose by trying. to try it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Then you just go back and do it again. I met people in the challenge who said they were there because they weren't able to finish the last one they were in. It wasn't a big deal. They just came back because they enjoy it. So why can't I do that too? Well, of course I can.
Let's talk about your 90-day videos.
I don't know what I expected. I mean, you kind of get this fantasy that you're going to be super good by the end. And the funny thing is, all of my non Spanish speaking friends think I'm a genius now that I can speak Spanish. And then all of my Spanish speaking friends, they laugh when I talk because they say, you are making mistakes. They say, but we can understand what you're trying to say. And they like it now because I can actually communicate and they correct me and stuff. And that's good. But the reality, what you imagine it's going to be and then what the reality turns out to be is quite interesting because it's still very satisfying. And I wasn't sure what to talk about because I didn't do a lot of, I found an italki teacher I really liked, and he specialized in conversation. And he told me I knew a lot of words, but he says I had a lot of grammar and things to work on, sentence structures and stuff to get right. And I was too sloppy with male, female cases and all of that stuff. So I just needed practice with that. So I was determined to work on that. But then all that stuff happened in the last month and my practice time got cut down a lot and I didn't think I'd have enough time to complete the video. So I just had a frank conversation with him. I said, look, I'm not sure how much I can do, but I have to do at least 15 minutes to meet the challenge. And he says, oh, you can do that. He says, let's just talk about things we've already talked about before. And I've always talked about farm things because I live on a farm and he liked that. So we talked about, fruit trees and, different animals. And he was telling me about how things are in Uruguay, with the temperature wise and their citrus trees there and different things you find in gardens. And probably one of the most difficult parts of the conversation was I had to tell him I just built a house for firewood. And talking about the construction was a little out of my area, so I had to like improvise. But and then I was having internet connection problems because I live in a rural area and the connection would come and go. So I'm recording this. I got that eVer software, right, to record the whole thing, and it's going fine. And like 10 minutes into it, picture freezes up, but you can still hear the sound. But we talked for like 52 minutes, and I got it recorded, but the big chunk in the middle was all frozen. So I thought, oh, how do I fix this? And I thought, well, I can cut out all the frozen bits and just paste the two ends together. It's not the best part of the conversation, but at least I've got sound and picture. And then I thought, I'd also recorded it on the side with a camera. And I thought, well, I could just edit this camera into the thing and make it better. But I thought, I haven't got time. And I just like be happy with the obtainable. Sometimes good enough will do. And so I just took the two ends that got recorded all right, and I cut it down, to 15 minutes, or was it, maybe it was like 20 something minutes or something, and I put it on there, but it met the 15-minute requirement, and it was fine. I thought it worked better than I expected. The funny thing was, the whole thing that had prevented me from signing up for the challenge in the first place were all these fears about different things. But now that I've done it, I'm looking back on it, it's just like, why did I wait so long to do it? There's nothing to be afraid of. So what if you screw up? You learn from that. It was great.
So what would you say your biggest takeaway from the challenge was?
To embrace your mistakes and basically just do it, because that was the silly thing. I mean, I thought, oh, I can't have a conversation with strangers in other countries in a language I can hardly speak. And it's like, well, yes, you can. You actually can. And since doing that, I've always been a kind of an introvert. And the idea of meeting strangers has never been interesting to me. But once you've done that, it's like then talking to strangers in English is real easy. It just helped my confidence a lot. And I didn't expect that. I didn't expect it to spill over into other areas of my life. But I feel like all this juggling and learning how to fit things in, it's like, if I can do that with language learning, what else can I do that with? Lots of things. You learn skills and things that you can apply to other areas of your life as well. So, there were so many pluses. Even when I was halfway through the challenge, I thought, if I suddenly had to stop now, it's already worth it. I've already learned so much that it's already been worth my time, even if I don't get to complete it this time. So the biggest thing I took away from it was just do it. If you're sitting on the fence about it because you think there's all these things that could interfere and you're waiting for the perfect time. A, the perfect time probably will never come. B, the whole point is fitting it into your life with whatever's going on or whatever could go on. So that's the point of it. So if you just do it and you have that and don't stress about it. I mean, that's the biggest way I was able to help myself in the challenge was just like relax. Don't stress about it. If it doesn't happen this time, it'll happen next time. Do what you can. Be happy with the obtainable. Learn. Do it and learn. Just do it.
What would your advice be to someone just starting the Add1 Challenge now?
The challenge has been going on for a while now, and you're very experienced with helping people in that. And what it starts off, you get offered all these links and stuff about stuff. I printed up the Add1 Challenge schedule, so I just have it right in front of me in hard copy, and that way I was able to look ahead or know what's coming up in the next few days and then try to plan my time around that. That was very helpful. And you gave lots of advice about usually at just the right time. One thing I didn't anticipate was how interested I would be in reading Slack and listening to what people were saying. So, I'd scheduled all this time to put aside for my minimum requirement, but then there was all these things I wanted to read. And I actually enjoyed listening to people's videos. I mean, I'd studied German and French 35 years ago, but there's all these German and French learners, and it's like, it all starts coming back when you start listening to it. And that was kind of exciting. But, I'm thinking like, but what about my assignments? And right about then you'd send out an email. Now, don't get lost in Slack now. It's very tempting, but you should probably try to do your assignments first and then do the rest of it later. And I sort of kind of told myself, well, I'm going to do the assignments, and my reward for doing that would be finding time to read Slack afterwards. So sometimes I was up, too late at night looking at Slack, but that was very, very fulfilling to me, being able to read what other people were doing and actually converse with them too. Being in the company of other language learners, I mean, most of my life, I felt like I was a bit of a freak because I wanted to learn multiple languages, and people would say, well, who do you think you are? You're not a genius. And it was like, well, I'd never heard of polyglots when I was in college in 1980. You know what I mean? And so when I found out about polyglots online eventually, that's how I found out about Fluent in 3 months and stuff. And I just thought, my God, there's always been people like this. And now you can actually go online and talk to them. And it's not weird at all. The way I feel about languages, there's nothing weird about it. I'm in good company. There's people all over the world who feel that way. And then you can connect with them in an event like that. So that's one of the reasons I'm probably going to come back and do a challenge again this summer, and probably many more in the future. It's the world's a smaller place now, and my comfort zone has been expanded by doing the challenge. And so, the playground's bigger.
Well, we look forward to having you back. Before we close out, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I understand why people have reservations and fears about it, but you just got to kind of deal with that in your own mind and just make up your mind that I'm doing this for fun, and I'm going to handle it with a light touch and just be open to it. And the guidance, like I said, you gave good guidance during the whole challenge, and there's other experienced challengers in there, and they had very good advice too. So I really felt one thing that really helped me doing the challenge with other people is that you can learn an awful lot all on your own, but in the company of other people, learning can be so much easier because you're sharing the learning, and you're sometimes teaching other people, and a lot of times they're teaching you, but it happens in a natural environment of just camaraderie and exchange, and you can't get that by yourself. You just can't. We're human beings, we're social creatures, and some things are just better done in the company of other people, other like-minded people. So it was like totally worth it. My only regret was I waited so long to do it.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience in the Add1 Challenge.
And thank you so much for doing it and offering it, and well, gosh, I'm looking forward to it.